Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome. It's David Hodge. All right, brothers and sisters. It's a continuation on what's going on in the Middle East. As I explained, things are not going to get better, only worse. The conflict is ongoing. Israel has reportedly killed a top Iranian naval commander in a target strike. This marks a serious escalation. So now, targeting high-level leadership. Israel is making things worse for themselves. Tension is rising in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a key global oil route. That's not getting. They're trying to solve that, and that's not coming to. It's not going well for what they're trying to do, especially when they're attacking. Israel is attacking America. They're along with them, making things worse, thinking that they're doing good. You see, but it's just making things worse. So they're launching new strikes directly at Tehran, and so Iran continues firing missiles into Israel in this ongoing battle. So the fighting is spreading. Israel has sent thousands of troops into southern Lebanon. Heavy airstrikes are hitting Hezbollah areas in Beirut. A U.S. base in Saudi Arabia was reported attacked by drones. And global oil crisis risk. Iran has blocked access to the Strait of Hormuz. This route, it carries a major portion of the world's oil. So oil prices have spiked. In the U.S., like I said, Israel's still attacking, but the U.S. delayed further escalation to allow negotiations. But Iran denies any talk about peace or negotiations. No ceasefire agreement has been reached, which we know that it will not be. So while there's mass displacement and killings and infrastructures continue to be damaged, this thing is increasing. And the global oil supply and gas price are at risk. And more countries are getting involved. So the bottom line, brothers and sisters, is this situation is not going to go away. And Iran, they're not tolerating anything from anyone else. They're not allowing. They're not throwing in a towel to make agreements, is what I'm saying. They're not here to make peace. They're here for war.
Iran has warned the United States against deployment of ground troops in the Middle East. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, has said that Tehran was closely monitoring all the U.S. military movement in the region, especially troops deployment. In an X post, Ghalibaf said, "What the generals have broke, the soldiers can't fix. Instead, they will fall victim to Netanyahu's delusions. Do not test our resolve to defend our land." The Donald Trump administration has offered a 15-point ceasefire plan to Iran through intermediaries from Pakistan. The development comes amid the U.S. military preparing to send at least 1,000 more troops to supplement some 50,000 troops already in the Mideast. The Pentagon is also in the process of deploying 2 Marine units that will add about 5,000 Marines and thousands of sailors to the region, the Associated Press reported.
Never ever sue the driver who crashed into you after a car accident. There's a better way to get compensated that's...
A 15-point plan has been transmitted to Iran from the United States seeking to potentially end the war that has just disrupted the Middle East. Now, the details of this plan remain in question, but officials have told the Associated Press that Pakistan, which has been one of the countries trying to get a diplomatic route to the end of the conflict, has transmitted it to Tehran. Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey have been key in trying to negotiate a settlement to the war. Now, Iran is insisting that it's going to continue its attacks for right now, and we've seen drones and missiles target Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain this morning already. And it remains unclear if this is just another pressure tactic by the Trump administration, as already it has called up the 82nd Airborne. That division would be key in launching attacks on airfields or potentially islands in the Persian Gulf. Already, there's been discussions about the United States potentially seizing Karg Island, which is Iran's main oil terminal in the Persian Gulf, or taking islands nearer to the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, through which about 20% of all natural gas and oil once transited before the war. Iran is still continuing to maintain its chokehold on that route, though some ships have gone through, apparently with Tehran's blessings. So it remains unclear whether this 15-point plan is going to be enough to try to get to the negotiating table, but these new troop movements, as well as the soon-to-be arrival of more U.S. Marines to the region, again puts up the pressure on Iran as its attacks show no signs of stopping.
Iran, in a warning to Gulf nations, is directly questioning the very foundation of U.S. military presence. A stunning warning from Iran is now shaking the Gulf region. Tehran is directly questioning the very foundation of U.S. military presence. What good have U.S. bases brought you? And if Israel attacks, will America fire even a single bullet to defend you? This is the blunt message delivered to Gulf nations, a reality check that is sending shockwaves across the region. Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters has issued a powerful call, urging Arab and Islamic nations to rethink their security alliances. Tehran says the era of relying on the United States is over, and a new regional security order must emerge without U.S. or Israel. Iran is positioning itself as the frontline defender of the Islamic world, claiming that the current conflict marks a historic turning point.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, to all our Muslim brothers throughout the Arab world. This year, the Islamic world observed an Eid al-Fitr that was quite different from what it had known in previous years. As I am brought to witness a new criminal aggression launched by the Israelis and Americans against Iran, a vital pillar in the Islamic world. That country has always been at the forefront defending the Islamic nation against unjust aggression, especially what the oppressed Palestinian people are subjected to. He proved the sincerity of his allegiance to this doctrine by offering the most noble and precious of blood, particularly in two direct head-on confrontations. However, the time has come today for us as Muslims to revert to the divine words of Almighty Allah in the Noble Quran. So do not take from among them allies until they emigrate for the cause of Allah. But if they turn away, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them. And do not take from among them any protector or helper. So Allah, the Blessed and Exalted, has explicitly forbidden Muslims from entrusting their affairs to disbelievers, and He commanded us not to place our hopes on the enemies of Allah and His Messenger concerning this matter. As a deeply rooted Islamic civilization and a unified, cohesive world founded on Islam and guided by the Quran, it is essential for us to stand firmly on our own feet with a decisive and definitive stance to ensure our future and the well-being of our coming generations. Fellow Muslim brothers, we absolutely do not need to ensure the security of our region, a state that is thousands of kilometers away from us. We do not need a state that by its own statement views Islamic countries as merely a milking cow. Nor do we need a state that makes Israel's security and interests its first and last concern, then sacrifices all other nations for that. And we do not need a state that views Muslims as utterly worthless beings, a state that sees in them nothing more than the vast wealth, the oil and the gas hidden beneath their lands. What good then has America and its military bases truly brought you in this region? And if, God forbid, you were to face aggression today from the army of the Zionist entity, would the Americans fire even a single bullet in your defense? We, all of us Muslims, still very clearly remember how the alliances of Syria and the Hashd on the one hand, the absence of a strategically brilliant supporting power, and on the other hand, a lack of independent armament capabilities was a significant cause for the Arab defeat against the occupying entity in the 1967 and 1973 wars. Today, Iran, by fulfilling that sincere promise and by shattering the illusion of America and the Zionist entity's invincibility, has achieved the dream that long terrified Muslims. Therefore, the very logic of political majority dictates that we strive under the emerging regional system to establish a comprehensive security union. It is imperative that we unite, all of us, to guarantee our own security and proceed towards a collective security pact, one that is founded upon Islam and the Quran as its ultimate reference, its central axis, and its unshakable foundation. How then has it come to pass that an alliance between Muslim nations and an arrogant, infidel, disbelieving state has become easier to forge than the unity of Muslims among themselves? Turning away from the Holy Quran and its teachings is the root of the calamities that have afflicted the Islamic world today. The Islamic Republic of Iran declares its readiness to establish a security and military union in this region without the presence of the United States of America and the usurping Zionist entity. Let us not forget the words of Allah the Almighty as revealed in His glorious book, where He declared, "Do not lose heart nor fall into despair, and do not grieve, for you shall be the uppermost if you are truly believers, and peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you."
I recently learned something that shocked me, and it should have made national news. In a closed-door meeting,
The message goes beyond rhetoric. Iran is offering to build a joint military and security alliance, an alliance led by regional powers and completely independent of Western influence. At the same time, Tehran is raising the stakes diplomatically by placing sweeping demands on the table for any ceasefire. These demands are being driven by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which now holds significant power within Iran's leadership structure. Among the key demands is a major shift in regional dynamics. Iran wants all American military bases in the Gulf shut down. It is also demanding reparations for recent attacks and guarantees that future conflicts will not restart. Tehran is calling for the lifting of all sanctions, a long-standing demand that has defined its global standoff. Another critical demand targets Israel's regional operations. Iran wants an end to strikes on allied groups like Hezbollah. Perhaps the most controversial demand is this: Iran insists on retaining its missile program without any restrictions. And then comes a strategic move that could reshape global trade. Iran wants a new order in the Strait of Hormuz, including the right to collect transit fees from passing vessels, a move that could impact global energy flows significantly. But Washington is not on board. The Trump administration has reportedly rejected these demands outright, calling them unrealistic and unacceptable, and signaling that negotiations may face serious roadblocks ahead. This sets the stage for a deeper confrontation, not just militarily, but politically and economically. Iran is now challenging the entire security architecture of the Gulf and asking regional nations to choose sides.
Right. So you can see Iran, they're focused, they're determined, they're not calling quits. There's no peace. They're putting in their demands. They're not accepting anything less. So that means that we're still moving forward in the process of the destruction of false Israel, because we know that these devils, they're in Satan, false Israel. They're only going to continue to make things worse. Like I said, Iran's not up for debate of negotiation and things of that such. So we're at that time where things are about to go bad for America and Israel. America's involvement in this war is about to end tragically. We're at the time with Michael and his angels versus Dragon and his angels. You see, that will end with the defeat of the House of Sod, which is the Dragon's angels. Which is right. The House of Sod is right. The Dragon and his angels. That's the House of Sod. American Britain, false Israel. Which there will be a switch of power with Iran and Syria taking over and gaining power over the Middle East, which they're Michael's angels. Michael's and his angels, which Michael is the God, Master Prophet Muhammad. And his angels is Iran and Syria. So once they gain power and take over with the aid of the God, that's pretty much it. You see, Scripture backs it up. It says, "And not, it proved strong, not but place was found of them yet in the heaven," which is talking about what's taking place now in the Middle East, the war, and was thrown, the dragon, the great, the serpent, the archaic, the being called devil and the Satan. That's the dragon and his angels. The House of Sod, America, Britain, false Israel. Said, the making to air, the being inhabited whole, he was thrown into the earth, and the angels of him with him were thrown. That's the defeat. You see? So false Israel and them lose this war, along with their destruction. And when this happens, this is going to change reality as you know it forever. America will no longer have access to oil in the Middle East, leading to an energy crisis here. You see what's already taking place. But it'd be even worse. No food, no water, no oil, no gas. Total economic collapse. Severe social unrest. People freezing to death. Not having energy any energy for heating in the dead of winter. And, right, people literally be starving to death. So that's what it says, men's hearts failing them from fear in the expectation of those things which are coming up on earth, meaning coming here to America. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken, talking about the authority of false Israel, and that's about to be shaken. The dragon, the house of side, and all them, they about to move. They about to get removed out of those situations. American Britain, all them, and that's what you see happening over there is coming here. So everything you see over there, all that killing and chaos and all that back and forth and starvation, and you see what's going on, and all that's coming here. So what's coming here is worse than anything that you know, including what's happening over there, including any Great Depression, any Holocaust, any world wars, anything that you know that you think is bad, it's going to be worse. What's coming here is going to be worse than what you're seeing and what you know. And that's when it said men's hearts will be failing them, meaning they're going to be having heart attacks. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to decrease the chance of our people having heart attacks, because we don't want our people to be hurt in the process or dying. We want people to be dying from heart attacks in the process. So it's going to be a shock. So we want to limit reduce the shock, so don't drive them into a heart attack. So you get the heads up, on what's going on. But we're telling our people to get out of America. Follow your vision. Invest in yourself. The Abraham Covenant. That's your vision. Letting you know you have a second option, which is leave America, because we know it's about to get real bad. And you don't want to get caught up in that judgment. So, because what they did to us for the 400 years, what's coming to them is going to be way worse, you see, than what happened to us. We're going into a time of unprecedented trouble. You see, they do judgment, and we don't want our people to get caught up in that, because you're not do that. You do glory. You do paradise, you see, because you went through all this hell. And now it's time for you to get your reward, which is the Abraham Covenant, which is to go back home. Which is to go home, return back home, you see. So we're going through a purification process, brothers and sisters. And then you just need to get your mind back, the Injil, you see. Get your power back, the 5 mathematical pillars of Islam. We're going to reunite, and we're going to work together as one body, you see. And we're going to get out of here. We're going to save all our people, get our people up out of here, We're important. Our body, we're one body. Every body part, every piece of our body is important, brothers and sisters. That's the importance of sharing this information, letting our people know that this time is coming, and we're in a time of intense darkness, and they're going to attack us. Once all this happens and they lose the war, American Britain will be kicked out before false Israel is even destroyed, and that's when they come and attack you. So we're here to tell our people, once you see that, they coming for us. And that's when I say flee. That's that point at that time, where that configuration, that sequence where it says when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, it's because they're isolated now. And American Britain be kicked out, so now they don't have that aid anymore. So now they're surrounded by armies. And they say flee, because now they can't allow false Israel to be destroyed before they can't allow false Israel to be destroyed, because if they're destroyed before they attack us, then we'll find out who we are, and then that means they're in trouble. Because now you know who you are, and now once you figure out who you are, which is God's chosen people, you the God, and now they're in trouble. They're in for a rude awakening, judgment, you see, because you're the ones that do it. Said, do unto them as was done to you. Meaning now you're here to give them judgment. Now you got your mind. They don't have any power over you. You have the ultimate power now over them. And that's what they don't want. They're trying to escape judgment. So they're They hoping you never wake up. So they got to come attack us before we wake up. So they're trying to get rid of the evidence, you see, before court, you see. But it's not going to happen. We're going to rise together as one great army. And we're going to get through this, brothers and sisters. Just hold on.
Hello and welcome to our continuing coverage of Operation Roaring Lion and Operation Epic Fury. I'm Chris Mitchell.
And I'm Julie Stahl.
Well, coming up on a report today will be our CBN correspondent, Paul Petit, Alex Trayman from Jewish News Syndicate, and Jonathan Conricus from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Throughout the broadcast, our team will be monitoring your questions. So please post your questions and prayer requests in the chat or in the comments section. And if you can, let us know where you're watching from around the world. But before we get to all of that, here's the latest from our Jerusalem news desk.
Israel continues striking inside Iran, while Iran and Hezbollah fire back. One woman died Tuesday night in the Galilee region, killed in a Hezbollah rocket attack. The Israeli defense minister now says troops will maintain a security zone in southern Lebanon until Hezbollah's threat is removed. But as the war rages on, President Trump says peace talks with Iran are underway.
They'd like to make a deal. And who wouldn't if you were there?
Trump says a team of top officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance, are leading the effort and pushing for a peace summit in Pakistan, according to the Times of Israel. Reports say the U.S. has delivered a 15-point proposal targeting Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missiles, and control of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump told reporters that Iran has offered what he calls a present, but gave no details.
And the president arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money.
Was it related to the Strait of Hormuz and the flow?
Yeah, it was related to the flow and to the strait, yeah.
An Iranian military spokesman rejected reports of negotiations, calling it a U.S. ploy to get out of a strategic defeat. In the past, Iran has demanded the immediate closure of all American bases in the Persian Gulf, an end of Israeli attacks, removal of all sanctions, and compensation for war damages. A U.S. official calling those demands ridiculous.
We negotiate with bombs. We're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved on that battlefield.
The Pentagon is now moving as many as 3,000 additional troops into the region as the war spreads to northern Iraq. CBN's senior international correspondent reports from Iraq's Kurdistan region, the scene of another Iranian attack.
This is George Thomas in Erbil, in Iraq's northern Kurdistan region. On Tuesday morning, 6 Iranian ballistic missiles hit 2 Peshmerga positions about an hour and a half north of here. 6 Kurdish fighters were killed and more than 30 others were wounded. The United States accusing Iran and their militia proxies here in Iraq of wreaking havoc across the country.
From the battlefield to the back channels, many have argued long-term peace with Iran can't take place without regime change. Trump says it's happening.
We have really regime change. You know, this is a change in the regime because the leaders are all very different than the ones that we started off with that created all those problems.
While Israeli officials are doubtful that peace efforts will bear fruit, Gulf states are said to be alarmed at the prospects of a deal. The leaders of Saudi Arabia and the UAE reportedly are privately urging President Trump to continue the war until Iran is no longer a threat to the region. Paul Petit, CBN News, Jerusalem.
What would you tell a man who was called gifted his whole life, but has nothing to show for it at 40?
Joins us from our Jerusalem newsroom. Paul, what are some of the other details about President Trump's 15-point plan with Iran?
Yeah, Chris, a lot of this is nothing new. You know, the proposal centers on Iran giving up its nuclear program, dismantling key facilities, stopping their uranium enrichment. This has pretty much been the request from the very get-go. Trump also, though, wants Iran to halt their ballistic missile development and support for any proxy groups such as Hezbollah. So nothing new there either. Now, in return, the U.S. would lift nuclear-related sanctions that also allow a civilian nuclear program under international monitoring. That's the catch. The plan also calls for reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to stabilize the global energy markets. And now to make this all happen, well, a New York Post report says the deal includes a temporary ceasefire window to allow these negotiations to actually happen. So overall, it's a maximum pressure framework, I would say, pairing major concessions from Iran with economic relief and security guarantees from the West. Back to you.
So, Paul, on the other side of the table is Iran. What demands do they have to end the conflict?
Yeah, Julie, we're hearing that Iran is pushing back hard here, demanding the complete lifting of U.S. sanctions as a condition for any deal that they want to make. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, this is just today, Tehran is also seeking reparations for damage from the U.S. and Israeli airstrikes during the war. Now, officials are also in Iran wanting to keep their ballistic missile program intact, which is a major sticking point, obviously, for Washington and the White House, and likely a non-starter in this whole process. So Iran has also called for the removal of U.S. military presence in the region. That includes bases in the Gulf, which can likely be yet another sticking point. And perhaps most significant here is, Reuters reporting that Iranian leaders we're talking about are deeply skeptical of U.S. intentions, questioning whether any agreement would even hold on our part. And of course, based on our history with Iran, the question really is, will they hold up their end of the bargain? So we'll just have to wait and see exactly how far this goes. But many, many officials in Israel, as well as Washington and worldwide, are really skeptical.
Yeah, I know, Paul. Some are wondering if Iran's maximum would meet Trump's minimum. We'll see how that goes. On the other hand, there's U.S. troops being sent into the Middle East. So where are they coming from, and what are they going to be doing?
Yeah, what we know right now is the troops are coming from their 82nd Airborne Division. It's an elite rapid response force. They're based in the U.S., and according to a Wall Street Journal report, about 3,000 paratroopers in all, as I mentioned in my story earlier. They're being deployed as part of a brigade combat team and command unit. Now, they're basically trained to deploy within hours, including parachuting into hostile territory, securing key targets like airfields. So their mission could include protecting strategic locations, supporting allies, or preparing for possible ground operations. Been hearing a lot about that. So in other words, they're ready for anything and everything at any time. Now, officials also say the deployment gives the U.S. more options in these negotiation processes, basically a deterrence to direct military action if, in fact, the diplomacy fails.
Paul, in all of these lists, I don't hear anything about Iranian funding of proxies. So you mentioned Israel plans to hold a security zone in Lebanon. How will that help tackle the threat from Hezbollah?
Yeah, just to set the record straight, Julie, the part of Trump's plan and his proposal is calling for the halt of any type of funding from Iran to any of the proxies, including Hezbollah. But as far as what's going on up north, we heard about this woman's death in my report. From my understanding, that is the first person that has been killed by a Hezbollah rocket. Up to now, they've all been Iranian missiles. Now, the idea here, to answer your question, is that Israeli security zone in southern Lebanon would create this buffer that we've been hearing about, right, against Hezbollah forces and its northern border. So the goal here is to push Hezbollah fighters and rocket systems further away, making these cross-border attacks much more difficult than what we're seeing almost on a daily basis out here. Now, Israeli officials believe holding territory will allow their military to be able to monitor, strike threats more quickly in real time. It also gives Israel a forward operating area to prevent Hezbollah from rebuilding infrastructure near the border. So overall here, Julie, the strategy is designed to create sort of a long-term deterrence, not just respond to attacks as they have, after they happen, being on the forefront of it and being able to attack it quickly and proactively. Back to the studio.
Paul, I just want to follow up on the question of actually American boots on the ground. Many people are wondering if this amphibious assault group coming from Japan will actually be used maybe to take over Karg Island. You know, that's the 8 square mile island where most of the oil from Iran gets passed through, and that they may actually go ahead and take that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we heard that early on, that was in fact part of the strategy here. And I don't think, again, Trump is tipping his cards right now and doesn't want to show his hand as to what they'll do, where they'll go. But that is part of the strategy, because if they could take that island, we're talking 90% of China's oil goes through there. So it's a very strategic position. And so we know that U.S. forces bombed that area without hitting a lot of the main and important and vital infrastructure to the oil production and movement there. But owning that island, taking over that island, would certainly give the U.S. an upper hand in this issue going on with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. Chris?
Are you looking for the most affordable way to add electric cooling to your older home? If that's the case, then you're going to want to take a look at this new system.
So, Paul, I mean, those two lists of things that you know, Trump is demanding and Iran is demanding, they're like opposite. Like, what do you think the chances are that there could really be kind of an agreement?
We're hearing very, very little encouraging words regarding this. There's just too much in between. And frankly, Iran continues to be obstinate in this area, and they're sort of being, you know, sort of a front as to whether they feel their demands are going to get met. So they're approaching this as if they have the upper hand, which is certainly not the case. And Trump, from the get-go, as I mentioned earlier, you know, it's all about the missiles. You know, it's all about uranium, and it's all about regime change. And at the end of the story, he said, well, you know, we have regime change. Well, the question is, what kind of regime change, right? I mean, are we just saying because the old regime has been killed off, we have a new regime? Is this a regime that will work with the U.S.? And is this a regime that will help the people that are protesting, not try to kill them? So a lot needs to be answered here when it comes simply to regime change, and that could be a pivotal issue, and obviously it is with Israel, a very vital issue to overall negotiations and how this plays out overall in the coming days. Julie?
Well, Paul, thanks for your insight, analysis. We'll be talking more as time goes on. This is an amazing time to be here in Israel and the Middle East.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, some might be asking about talking about the negotiation to end the war now. The U.S. and Israel are decimating the Iranian leadership and its ability to wage war. So is there even any hope that they would come to an agreement? CBAN President Gordon Robertson posed that question to Jonathan Conricus from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and here's what he answered.
We can see the U.S. administration led by President Trump giving diplomacy a chance here and giving diplomacy a very honest chance, which I think is admirable, and I think that's the way to go. We want to make sure that, you know, we minimize the risk for American servicemen and for others if we can achieve the desired outcome without using force and without putting American troops in harm's way, then that's probably the best way to do it. I have serious doubt as to the sincerity and truthfulness of the Iranian regime. You could see that, you know, their strategy is to use diplomacy as a delaying mechanism in order to continue to, on one hand, build nuclear weapons, build ballistic missiles, and continue to fund terror. And then on the other hand, negotiating and speaking with the West in order to facilitate the other clandestine activities that they're going. That's the Iranian pattern that we've seen for the last 30-odd years. That's exactly why we are in this situation now, because both the U.S. and Israel have said very clearly, we do not trust Iranian intentions, we do not trust your actions, and we see that when you negotiate, it is not in good faith. And the president has, I think, used exactly those words, and so has Envoy Witkoff and others. They are not negotiating in good faith. But I think it's upon, you know, it behooves leaders with responsibility for human life to try to exhaust diplomatic efforts before putting soldiers in harm's way. But at the end of the day, as we said before, you know, this is a regime that thinks and believes that it is fulfilling a divine decree by spreading Sharia law, by occupying more land, and by spreading the Islamic revolution. It's very difficult to reason with people like those, and up until now, we haven't been able to do so.
Julia, Jonathan really brings up a good point, because this is really, in many ways, a spiritual, religious war. That's how Iran sees it. This is their divine decree, as he said, to establish Sharia law throughout the Middle East and then the world.
Yeah, and you know, according to their understanding of Islam, it's perfectly fine to lie. It's perfectly fine to make a temporary agreement that the enemy thinks is like a permanent agreement, so that you can get stronger and accomplish your goals of Islamic takeover of the world.
Yeah,
So it doesn't seem very probable.
Yeah, well, in their brand of Shiite Islam,
Yeah.
they're looking for the 12th Imam, this Mahdi, this Islamic Messiah. And when he comes, there'll be a time of chaos in the world. And certainly, they're sowing chaos throughout the region right now.
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think part of what maybe people are missing or they're not connecting is that Iran has, you know, stood there like innocent for all these years, funding Hezbollah, funding Hamas, funding the Houthis, you know, and training them, sending the IRGC to train them, help them, weaponize everything. And, you know, with the intent of destruction, but they look like they're not really doing anything.
Yeah, we've said that many times. They can fight to the last Palestinian. They'll fight to the last Lebanese, the last Houthi, by sowing you know, seeds and all these proxies surrounding Israel right now.
Right, you know, they're Persian. What do they care about the Arabs?
Yeah, right. I have a question for you. Do you think that if Trump is serious about these negotiations, and if they ever had a deal with the regime, do you think that would disappoint a lot of Israelis?
I think so. You know, I think many of them are kind of wondering what Trump is doing at this point. I think I mentioned my neighbor asked me, you know, is he betraying us?
Yeah.
You know, because it's not just, for us, it's not just on a TV screen. This is like, you know, people running to shelters, people being killed, people being wounded, kids being afraid, kids not in school, trying to learn on Zoom, businesses closed. It's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. And I think actually the Gulf states would be disappointed as well. I think, as Paul was reporting, some of the Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, are asking the administration to make sure they finish the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, joining us right now is Alex Traiman. He's the Jerusalem bureau chief for jnsnews.org. Alex, thanks for joining us. Tell us what you think about your analysis of President Trump's current negotiations with Iran.
Hi, Chris. Well, we're watching closely to see what the president has in mind with negotiations. On the one hand, we see here a 15-point proposal, and it brings parallels to the 20-point proposal, which led to the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Now, of course, that ceasefire agreement did call for Israel to get all of its hostages back, living and dead, as well as for Israel to hold more than 50% of the territory in Gaza. So those conditions were very favorable for Israel, and Israel has held those conditions, as well as reserving the right to take out terrorists even since that ceasefire. So that ceasefire agreement proved to be beneficial to Israel in terms of its goals. And at the same time, we've also seen how Donald Trump has entered into negotiations with the Iranians. Now this will be the third occasion. And if we look at the previous two examples, the first was a negotiation on the nuclear program prior to Operation Rising Lion, which culminated with Operation Midnight Hammer back in June of last year and culminated with the United States bombing the nuclear reactor in Fordow, as well as just before this Operation Epic Fury and the Israeli Operation Roaring Lion. Again, President Trump entered into negotiations with Iran. In both cases, those negotiations broke down, and they were followed by extremely harsh military measures. So we see here that the president giving an opportunity to the Iranians to negotiate. He said that he would withhold American strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure and oil facilities. But if no negotiation is reached that the president of the United States finds acceptable, this could be the preceding act to an escalated military campaign where you might see President Trump order the U.S. military to take control of the Karg Island inside the Persian Gulf, where Iran has most of its oil-producing facilities, as well as take over most of the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz.
So, Alex, what do you believe are the goals of the U.S. and Israel, and are they compatible?
Well, I think they're compatible, but they're different. You definitely see the two, what Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth have referred to as the most powerful and the second most powerful air forces in the world flying side by side. You see the United States really targeting a lot of the heavy underground nuclear infrastructure of Iran, also for the United States, and making sure that oil can pass through the commercial Straits of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. These are two of the most important goals to the United States. Israel has another goal, and they've been pretty open about it, which is to create the scenarios on the ground in which the Iranian people can rise up and overthrow the regime. And that's why you've seen Israel on day one of this war take out the supreme leader Ali Khamenei, and Israel's been targeting senior levels of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Command, as well as mid-level commanders of the Basij, the shock troops, which are meant to suppress Iranian protests in the streets. So Israel really, I would say, laying the groundwork for a regime change inside Iran, while the United States targeting most of the nuclear facilities, both air forces targeting the ballistic missile infrastructures that have been pummeling Israel as well as other nations across the Middle East.
Hey, Alex, I may be dating ourselves. I think you produced one time a documentary called Iranium. Does that go way back? But certainly you were warning about Iran's nuclear program. Do you also believe what's happening right now is vindicating Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been warning about Iran and its nuclear program for decades, and somewhat like Winston Churchill warned about Nazi Germany pre-World War II?
Well, I think that that's correct. You see the prime minister basically potentially acting out some of his life's mission here, preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, a deliverable nuclear weapon, which would be an existential threat to the state of Israel. The state of Israel, a country the size of New Jersey with 10 million residents, Jews and non-Jews alike, it's what President Trump has referred to as a one-bomb country, meaning that if Iran was able to detonate a singular nuclear bomb in the state of Israel, it could be existentially devastating to the Jewish president and the future of the state of Israel. And at the same time, what you see here is that President Trump agrees with the prime minister on this. So yes, he is acting as what I've heard Richard Kemp refer to as probably the greatest leader in the world today, to act in the interest of his people and prevent an existential threat. And again, as you asked me about the weapons that Iran has been firing across the entire region, absolutely vindicating what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said. I saw a report today that the United Arab Emirates has been targeted in this war more than the state of Israel. And when you look at the ballistic missiles that have been fired into at least 12 countries, as far to the west as Cyprus, which is connected. I mean, it's more closely related to Europe than it is to the Middle East. And even those 4,000-kilometer ballistic missiles, which reached Diego Garcia, a British base in the Indian Ocean, this is what the prime minister has been saying. Iran has been developing intercontinental ballistic missiles and is a threat not only to the state of Israel, not only to the entire Middle East, but actually to Europe and the entire Western world.
From food-grade lubricants to LED lighting and every product in between, all in one place.
So, Alex, how would you describe what life is like now for Israelis?
Well, Israelis have been moving in and out of bomb shelters multiple times a day for nearly a month now. I think we're in the fourth week of war. Israel has a very sophisticated alert system in addition to a very sophisticated missile defense system. So Israelis will get emergency alerts on their phone. The second Israeli radar detects that a missile salvo has been fired from Iran. At that point, then you have a even further sophisticated level of segmentation of the country. I mentioned that the country is about the size of the state of New Jersey, but the warning system in Israel divides the country into about 600 zones. So after the initial detection of a fire, then the systems are determining where a missile could land in Israel and where it could be intercepted and where shrapnel could fall after an interception, and then giving a more targeted alert. At that point, Israelis are getting into bomb shelters. Many Israelis have in their apartments what is considered a safe room, a concrete and steel reinforced room. For those that have that, it's a little bit less inconvenient. For others that don't have that, they have to get out of their homes or out of their offices and get into a community bomb shelter, of which there are many in public institutions like schools and other places. But in between, you also get an alert when the event is ended, right? So after a missile has either landed or been intercepted, you get another alert saying it's safe to leave the bomb shelter. So in between these salvos, Israelis are going to work. Now many Israelis are preparing for the Passover holiday. The supermarkets doing a lot of shopping. And so Israelis are so resilient in the middle of being pummeled with literally hundreds of ballistic missiles over the past month. Israelis trying to make their way and get on and demonstrate the resilience that they have in between having to duck in and out of bomb shelters.
Yeah, Alex, it's remarkable to see how the Israeli people are so resilient during this time. Here's a final question and kind of a broad question. And this is Prime Minister Netanyahu saying he wants to set up the conditions for the fall of the Iranian people to take over. If the Islamic regime did fall, what would that mean for the Middle East?
Well, I think it would be a transformation for the entirety of the Middle East. Most importantly, it would be a transformation for the people of Iran. You have a country of over 90 million citizens that have been essentially taken hostage by this fanatical Islamic Republic that has destabilized the entirety of the Middle East, not just Iran. They've destabilized Iraq, they've destabilized Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Yemen. They have attacked 12 countries around them. And I think that once this Islamic Republic is out of the picture, no longer do the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas have any of that funding with which they can terrorize the Middle East. And the President of the United States, he really wants to see the Middle East settle down. He is looking to create an alternative trade corridor to the Chinese Belt Road Initiative. He wants to create this IMEC corridor, the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor, in which goods from Southeast Asia could travel via India, and many produced in India, across the Middle East through Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and from there shipped on to Europe or to the United States. So what he wants to see is this whole ring of terror that Iran has created dry up. Iran no longer be able to threaten the region. Then you will see the President of the United States look to expand upon the successful model of the Abraham Accords, in which Israel can normalize a relationship with many of its Arab neighbors. And then hopefully you can start to see commerce fly through the region. And I think that a period of quiet after two and a half years of war for Israel will just unleash Israel's economy in an amazing way.
Alex, last year you held a conference here in Jerusalem. I just want people to understand that it's canceled for now. But how can they find out more about it? It really was a premier conference of thinkers and newsmakers from Israel and around the world.
Yeah, thank you. Last year in April, we convened the inaugural JNS International Policy Summit in Jerusalem. We had over 120 speakers, including the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer. It was Mike Huckabee's first policy speech after being appointed as ambassador to Israel, and also legal experts, media personalities like Fox's Mark Levin and others. This year we had scheduled to hold the event on April 15, 16, and 17 in Jerusalem. We had over 230 speakers lined up over a 3-day period. Unfortunately, the airlines have canceled flights, and we've been forced to postpone the event to late June. So right now, the event will take place, God willing, June 21, 22, and 23. And people can go to jns-summit.org to learn more.
That's, I pray Bahatzlacha, good success to you on this conference, and thank you so much for your insights and for spending your time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I basically bought this roof over the internet, which wasn't something I'd ever done before, but it worked out.
For over 20 years, CBN has beamed life-giving Farsi broadcasts into Iran despite internet shutdowns. Now, with war erupting across the country today and civilians facing mass displacement and suffering, CBN is ready to deliver prayer support, emergency food, humanitarian aid, and the hope of Jesus to families whose lives have been upended by conflict.
Well, Julia, that was great. I mean, Alex's analysis is really excellent.
I know. He's really very, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
And that conference was amazing last year, and I know there's going to be another big one. Here are some of the questions that people have submitted. I think this is a great one, which we've kind of already dealt with. Doesn't negotiating a deal means leaving the regime in place?
It seems that way, doesn't it? It's kind of what everybody said. Also, I mean, there again, you know, we're not really sure what this deal would be and where it's headed. And
you know, and Trump says that's what he does. He makes deals. He does negotiating.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't do a deal just for the sake of doing a deal.
Right. But I mean, in the past, he hasn't.
Yeah.
He's pretty strong. Like he wants to have, you know, his needs met.
Right.
So,
here's another question, and which is, I think people have been asking since the very beginning, can America and Israel get weapons to the people of Iran to fight, and is it being considered?
Of course, we don't know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I wonder about that because, like, even if you just handed out guns to people or whatever, how are they going to fight these trained militia terrorists without intelligence information, without commanders, whatever? I mean, like, there has to be some kind of structure there.
Right.
So I don't know, but I don't know.
I did see one video clip the other day of actually, it was inside a car. They were going by a Bajish checkpoint, this paramilitary organization, and, you know, it was an ambush. So maybe that's one sign that some arms are getting. And I know we talked in the beginning of the war, or just in the first week or two, of the Kurds coming in from the north. And they certainly are a fighting group that really could help aid the cause.
Yeah, and I'm sure the U.S. isn't just, you know, you know, and they say it's up to the Iranian people. It's not like the U.S. wants to come in and take over.
Right.
But, you know, but I'm sure there are things going on that we don't know about.
Things that we could pray about.
Yes,
yeah.
Indeed.
And one of the prayer requests was for a 27-year-old who died from a Hezbollah rocket, Nouriel Durbin, 27. She was an IDF reservist, caregiver who was killed in a Hezbollah rocket attack in northern Israel shortly before her wedding. I mean, that's so tragic.
It's very tragic. Very, very tragic.
It reminds me of a tragedy as well during the Second Intifada when a father and his daughter, bride-to-be, were killed in a suicide bombing in German colony.
Yeah. And he was the head of the emergency services at Shari Tzedek Hospital.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, they would like us to pray for her family and her friends and whatever else we should pray about.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Sure. Lord, we do just thank you that you are in charge.
Prayers don't work. So anyways, brothers and sisters, as you can see, Trump, the United States, they're trying to do this peace agreement, as we shared. There won't be any peace. The end result is still going to be the destruction of false Israel. and American Britain kicked out in the defeat of the House of Assad, followed by our attack, because that isolates false Israel and sets up that destruction for them, and they can't allow them to be destroyed and us to find out that we are the true seed of Abraham. So they're going to attack us, brothers and sisters. And that's when it says flee. So pay attention. When it's time to go, it's time to go. If you get a heads up, you don't have to flee. So take heed. Stay aware, brothers and sisters. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more. Thank you for listening to me. Assalamu alaikum.